But I'm RyanHoskins. I'm a professor of film production here and occasionally screenwriting, critical studies, all that. So Rima invited me to do this, and I was very excited to talk to you guys. And I didn't want to sort of take this opportunity to talk about things I talk about in classes that you can take here. I wanted to do something that was really useful for ladies in the film industry. And so I took like the 2 months I had to sort of think about this and prepare it, and talk to a lot of my friends that are working in the business, and really just kind of see where they're at and like what are some things that they're dealing with, thinking about, that kind of thing. And that sort of like formed this. And I wanted the title to sound professional. I wanted it to sound very, sort of presentational, like career sustainability in filmmaking. But I want to be honest and tell you what the real title is. And it's now it's actually how not to hate your life and your job when you work in film and video production. And I think that's really, I think, the thing that you really need to consider. Hey, Megan. Because the thing is, like when you get out of film school, like you're in a film school, or if you go to a 4-year graduate film program, everybody there like wants to break into Hollywood. That's what they want to do. They want to like get into the industry. They want, they want a lasting career. They want to be, the next whatever famous director that they're lusting after career-wise, like Christopher Nolan or whoever. And in all likelihood, the vast majority of those students won't be working in the industry within like 2 or 3 years. And it's so interesting as to why that is. One of my teachers here and one of my mentors, still my friend actually, Charlie Myers, like he would tell the story, like he got out of USC's Stark producing program. It was the #1 film producing program in the world. And so like he got out of his graduating class of I forget how many people, he said within 18 months, 75% of them weren't working in the film industry after that. After putting in however many hundreds of thousands of dollars like into their education from USC, like they were not in the industry anymore because it's brutal. And like nobody really takes into account like how brutal and terrible an industry this is to work in. So I think that it's something that, like when I teach production classes, I do, want to make you aware that there is a certain degree of work ethic required, a certain degree of obviously like safety and procedure and everything required, but it's a tough industry you're trying to get into. Like it's hard. It's hard for everybody, but it's especially hard for not white straight men. And I say this as 2 of those 3 things. It is an important thing. And I think, just understanding like what can you do, like how can you think about, sort of working in this business, or even just like working in this art form, not even this business, just like working in, making movies of whatever kind. Like what can you do to actually, sort of stay in it and still love it or like still want to do it. And so this isn't something I really talk about in any of my classes. I wanted to give you guys, exclusive content. I think it's important, and I think it's not something we really don't talk about enough is this business sucks. And how do we sort of deal with the fact that it sucks? And here's the thing, like all industries are terrible. Like pretty much like there's no good industry that you can like get into, I guess. But it's just I think people don't understand like how rough this one can be. When you get into wanting to make movies, there are a lot of reasons to want to do it, and a lot of good reasons. If you love movies, great. Then obviously you would want to make them, or if you want to tell stories for a living. Like that's kind of where I came from. Like I was an English major and studied fiction writing, then got into theater, then got into movies. So I just like storytelling, and that's how I ended up here. If you want to work with, interesting, creative, talented people, like this is a collaborative medium. Like you want to work with other people, then yeah, this is a great industry for doing that. If you're interested in technology, like this is like constantly like pushing the bounds of technology and like growing and changing all the time. It's amazing. And also one thing that I think like a lot of people don't take into account is it's an interesting career that doesn't require a 4-year degree. So that's great because I don't want anybody going into tens of thousands of dollars of debt. That's why I teach at a community college. Because I paid too much money for a film education. But also there's bad reasons to do it. You want to be rich, you want to be famous, or you want to be the next insert name of filmmaker you worship to an uncomfortable degree here. Christopher Nolan usually, if we're being honest. I've taught enough production classes to know it's Christopher Nolan or Tarantino. Oh, Rima, you're nicer than I am. there are a lot of reasons to want to do it and to want to get into it. But then you realize certain things when you get into it. And within about a year or two, like these things will, like some or all of these things will become readily apparent. First of all, the time, energy, and attention required of you is a lot more than most other careers. When the standard of working is still 12-hour days and you more often than not go over that, like that's a lot, especially like when you're on your feet, when you're moving around a lot. My last set day as a first AD, like before I decided I didn't want to do that job anymore, I walked 37,000 steps in one day. My dogs were barking after that. But yeah, so like it's just, there's a lot more work and a lot more time that gets put into that. And especially like when it's, minimum 12-hour days, usually 6 days a week. And it eats up so much of your time. And even on your off time, you're either like traveling or doing prep or like all these other things. It occupies a lot of your time and mental energy, more than you ever could conceive that it would actually take up. Also, your value is measured by your productivity and nothing else. You are there to do work and serve the movie. Your humanity is completely discounted in favor of just like what are you contributing to the greater whole. Entry-level positions don't pay much, and you have to live in or near cities with very high cost of living. Like Los Angeles is expensive, Orange County is expensive, New York is expensive. There's all the major production hubs are generally, like Atlanta's getting more expensive, but it's not as bad. But it's getting there. And we'll talk about that in a little bit too. But yeah, so you're not getting paid a lot, and you have to live somewhere expensive, which is something that you have to kind of figure out and work through. The business attracts terrible people, and for a lot of the bad reasons. The ones that want to be rich, that want to be famous, those kinds of things. Or that just want to have power over other people too. Like the business attracts those kinds of people because it's a very hierarchical business. And so, the fact that there are like very distinct tiers and like levels you can work your way up in pretty much every aspect of the business. There are certain people who I think are very attracted to power and really enjoy wielding that power and when they finally get it. The good news is the industry washes out a lot of those people. Like most of those people aren't going to make it. But the problem is some of them do. And you're likely going to have to work with them. So that's just something you realize you're going to have to figure out at some point. At a certain point you realize you're not making art, you're making content, which I think wrestling with the difference between the fact that you went into this with like high-minded sort of aspirations to be an artist, and then you realize you're just feeding the content machine like that. For me, that was like a hard thing to sort of like reckon with. I'm like, I'm not making anything of value. Like it just sort of I don't know, that for me was hard to sort of wrap my head around. Also, this is just something I think is an important lesson for everybody. Like while you're still in film school, you will learn how replaceable you are and how everybody in the business is. Everybody is replaceable. There are other people who can do your job and for probably less money. And so that changes the way you interact with your own job. And it makes you, in a weird way, more desperate to cling on to it. And I think in an unhealthy way. And because you have this constant fear that you're not going to work again if you even sort of let anything slip. So, and this is also true like outside of the entertainment industry too. And so just generally, you kind of reckon with this at some point. You begin to realize at a certain point there's a little regard for your health and safety. And I mean, this is like we were talking about the Helena Hutchins thing. Like that whole set was just a complete disaster in terms of like paying attention to people's health and safety on that set. The fact that they were promised hotel rooms near the set and then were given hotel rooms 50 miles away. So not only were they working incredibly long set days, they had to drive more than an hour to and from set before and after every single shoot day. There was just so many things that compromised the health and safety of everybody on that set. And you realize that in order to save money, a lot of like studios and producers will happily make those compromises. And that I think is an awful thing. Yeah, Jamal.
One thing I noticed about that set you're talking about now
Mm-hmm.
is they said this was a low budget movie. This was a $7 million film.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, oh, low budget, $7 million. Okay.
Yep. I mean, by Hollywood standards, that is low budget, but at the same time, like that's not an excuse to drop the ball on safety. And
not low budget. I mean, saving this shot like $1,200.
Yeah, the low budget actually means something. Like in Hollywood, there is a budget scale that like where low budget I think represents, I think like 5 million to like 20 million or something like that. That's low budget, and then below that is ultra low budget, and then below that is micro budget. So low budget is not the lowest. It's like tall being the smallest thing you can get at Starbucks. So their definition of what's low budget is relative. So anyway. But yeah, also, this is something that is going to be a crushing realization about 2 years in. Your friendships, family relationships, and any hope you have of a romantic relationship will be severely compromised or go out the window completely. Like when I started doing this, like my friends just got used to me just being non-existent. Like I would go like 2 years like between talking to some friends, like because I was just working just too much and too hard, I think. So you also forget what hobbies are. Like I had to have my therapist ask me if I had hobbies, and I was just like, oh no, I don't. And like when people would ask me what my hobbies were before that, I was just like, yeah, movies. And when that's your job, that's not a hobby. So it just kind of becomes a thing. And then finally, kind of the end result of all this, capitalism. Just capitalism is the problem. So I'm getting way more just socialist as I get older. I don't know if that's just a millennial thing where we're like among the first generations just to be like, the system just needs to be set on fire. But yeah, so really capitalism's the problem. It's just making more money and just kind of shortchanging the workers more and more. And really that's kind of the root of all of these issues here. So yeah, there's a lot of reasons to not like the film industry and to fall out of love with it. And you will be confronted with a lot of those. And when I talk to my friends that are working like more regularly in production, I'm very fortunate in that this is how I pay my bills. But who are working more regularly in production, like I've heard horror stories that like fit like all of these categories. And so what I wanted to do is I wanted to ask them the different things that kind of keep them going in this business. So I've kind of cobbled together just kind of different ideas for how to kind of think about the career in such a way. But I do want to say there are plenty of good reasons to quit. A lot of people do, like I said, and I don't blame them. I think like leaving the industry is a perfectly valid solution. Like I don't like if you guys really want to do this and like make movies, cool. Like I want you to stay and I want you to stick it out and I want you to do so in a healthy way. But like if you are suffering and nothing you can do can fix it, like, it's not worth it. Movies aren't worth it. Like just run. So and I say that about any industry too. But I don't think you should sacrifice your health and well-being for any industry, really. So yeah, if you want to quit, like, I think that's a valid option. And I'm not going to be that one that's the person that's like, you can do it. You can, like, I think about quitting all the time. So I think that's fun. Yeah, like, look, I'm not going to lie to you guys. So like making movies, like I said, is hard and thankless in a lot of ways, and you know, just kind of brutal. So you kind of have to keep checking in with yourself every now and then. And so I think it's useful and it's important, but it's not a career that you should take for granted and then only realize years after the fact that you are not in a good place physically, mentally, emotionally because of how your job has been treating you. So that's kind of what I want to talk about today. Is like what can keep you going? And so this is like a weird bleak lecture, but you know what? That's how we're rolling today. Again, I don't want to lie to you guys. So this is just how it is. So yeah, let's say you don't want to quit. Can you make it so you want to keep working? So I want to divide this up into kind of two different categories of working in film and video production. And like kind of the way to think about it is different depending on sort of which category you find yourself in. But the first one, I sort of described as the craftsperson. This is encompassing like all the trades and below the line workers in Hollywood, independent feature production, all that. So art department, sound, camera team, G&E, production design, pre-production, post-production, like anybody who works in like the making of things for Hollywood studios, independent studios, production companies, that kind of thing. But also videographers creating content for clients too. I actually would put them in this category too, because what it is you work for hire. You are somebody who is actually working kind of at the mercy of a client or a studio or a production company. You are basically, hired to work on things, and that is how you support yourself. You rely on production work to pay your bills. And so that's a lot of people in this business. That's most people who like really are committed to careers in this business. More often than not, your bosses care more about the quality of the finished product and not how that product gets finished. And then you're constantly jumping from project to project. In fact, usually like you file for unemployment in between like each shoot that you work on to like keep your bills paid. I know a lot of people that do that. And so you're kind of like living paycheck to paycheck too in a lot of cases when you're kind of living this life. You're relying on networking to get more work. Like it's other people. Like you don't apply for jobs usually. You have other people basically just bring you on from set to set to set. Like that is really like how you sort of sustain your career over time as somebody who, basically like works on sort of larger scale productions as a member of like below the line crew. For the most part, you're judged on your work ethic and your personality. Just how much do you actually get done and are you good to work with? But the problem is your peers are the ones who are judging you. And if you do anything to make them look at you in a different light or in a negative light, that's going to affect your ability to get more work. And that is problematic when you work with terrible people. That has been an issue for a lot of people that I know. Advancement is really slow. Like that's just you end up working the same like assistant jobs for a long time and then you slowly kind of grind your way up. I had a friend who worked as a writer's assistant on the show Madam Secretary for 3-4 years and just stayed kind of an assistant for the longest time and eventually just gave up and went into documentary work and was much happier. Stability is non-existent because you are basically like moving from project to project all the time. It is a difficult career path, but for some people, like they love it and they really, enjoy and they thrive on it. So I'm not saying this is like just pure misery all the time, but it is challenging to kind of to live a very project to project existence and rely on that, like to survive financially, basically. So how do we make it sustainable? The first thing that I would always think to do, and I think grounds a lot of people, is ask if you really love doing the job. Now, I don't mean like being the job. I mean doing the job. Like there's a difference between like, yeah, I like being a camera person, but do you enjoy doing the work? Do you enjoy like showing up? Do you enjoy like showing up to set? Do you enjoy building cameras? Do you enjoy like setting focus marks? Do you enjoy like, the very specific, like every little piece about doing the job? Like, do you like it? Because I think some people like settle into a position and they're just kind of, the position's more an identity that they just kind of attach to themselves, but they either never really like doing the job or it just kind of, they forgot that it was something they loved to do in the first place. And so I think like really this is almost like a weirdly sort of stoic kind of like philosophical kind of way of thinking about it. But like actually taking a second and being like, do I love this work? And really just focusing yourself back in on doing the work and not all the other contextual stuff that might be ruining it for you. Like, do you just enjoy doing the work? And that might actually help you fall in love with doing it again. Like take away all sort of the capitalism from it. Like, do you just enjoy doing it and thinking about it that way? And I think it's an interesting way to kind of like find your place in the whole, sort of film production system. Because a lot of times people fall into jobs that they don't necessarily like. They just kind of keep doing it and don't really think about whether or not they like doing it. So in a lot of cases, like I've even been in a position where I've realized like I haven't liked doing the thing that I'm doing. I was just there because I like the people I did it with. And that I think is, it's an interesting crossroads to get to. For me, it was comedy. Like when I did live comedy, like I thought I enjoyed doing it, but then I realized like it was all about the people I was doing it with. When I tried like, going to UCB and like getting into sketch writing up there, I realized it was just different people and I didn't like it as much. And I didn't like the actual act of doing it. It felt different. And I realized like what I loved about it was just the people I was doing it with originally. So that was kind of like, it took me a while to realize like that was what I liked and it wasn't the actual job itself. It was, just the people I was around. So finding out like what it is you like about the job itself and if it's the job that you like doing, like really hone back in on that and, sort of find the love of like the actual act of doing it again. And I think that's helpful. Another thing that I think is really useful, find the good people. There are a lot of good people in this business. Like I talked about the terrible ones, and there are a few terrible ones that ruin a lot of things for a lot of people. But at the same time, there are a lot of good people. And your definition of good people will be different than another person's definition of good people. But I think find the people that you like and that you genuinely enjoy being around on set, that you genuinely enjoy working with, and get to know them really well. Like get to like them, and you know, like, yeah, that'll help them. You know, that'll help you find more work. Sure, if you manage to like bond and work well together, like they'll bring you onto other things. You can bring them onto other things. Like that's great. Like having that support network there is incredibly valuable. But at the same time, it'll make you happier because you're working with people that you care about, and it'll make you want to, like, that's what got me doing comedy for so long, even though I realized I didn't enjoy doing it. Like I loved being around those people and I loved making things with them. So find the good people and like if you can, like keep working with those people, like follow those people if you can. And the people I know who have really settled into the business, like they know the people that they like working with. And those people they'll bring each other onto projects and kind of stay close together, and that is, I think, is a great support network to build into it. So I think it's a useful thing to do. Be conscious of who the good people are and get to know them, and not in like like social climber kind of way. Like, you know, we need the support, and we need to have people we can lean on, and I think that's the most important thing. So don't think about it like a career advancement, like Machiavellian kind of thing. Like that's not what this is about. But just find the good people, and you know, like let them be the sort of representative of your experience working in this industry. So don't let the bad people, you know, be the ones dominating it. Also, find projects you care about. I think you're not going to get a lot of opportunity to like choose things that you work on necessarily. Like you're just going to be kind of a leaf on the wind and just sort of get brought on to different projects, like depending on, you know, sort of who's inviting you to work on them, who's offering you work and that kind of thing. But a former student of mine who does a lot of like art direction and production design work, she was telling me that, you know, every now and then she'll pick a project that she just likes a lot, and it won't pay anything or it'll pay very little, but you know, doing those projects gets like the bad taste of the paid but not great jobs out of her mouth. And I think that's a great way of thinking about it. Like, you know, if you can afford to, like, you know, take a weekend and, you know, work on a short that you just like or that's made by people that you like. And you can kind of like find sort of the nourishing creative energy in doing that. It's really, again, like, you know, sort of talking about all the negatives and working in production, it's really easy to kind of lose sight of what you liked about it in the first place. This can remind you, like if you work on projects with people you care about or on the projects themselves, if you care about those, that's a great way to kind of like reignite your love for, you know, making stuff again. And I think that's, it's always good to kind of be on the lookout for, you know, if you're working on a picture with somebody and they're like, oh, I have this passion project and you love it, work on it. Like take a weekend. If you can afford to, just to like go and help them out with it, do it. It'll make you feel better. And yeah, you're not making any money on it, but it'll feel good to help them out. And you'll get to work on something that, you know, people actually care about and has some love put into it. That's a little more art than just, you know, grinding out more content for Netflix. So there's a lot of good that can be done in that, I think. So if you have the ability to work on something that, you know, yeah, maybe it won't pay a lot, but if it'll feel good to work on something different than the normal grind, or if you love the script, or, you know, if you love the people that are doing it, go for it. And it'll feel good to do that kind of thing. And because it won't just be about money, it won't just be about a job. Like you're actually making something that matters to people. So I think that even if it's just the people making it, like that still feels a lot better in a lot of cases. So I don't know. I pretty much only try to do this now. So because this pays my bills. What a luxury. Anyway, moving on. This is more like on a union level. Like if you're sort of a union worker on a set, this has been happening a lot lately, and things have been getting better, which is in some cases, which is great. There's been the Pay Up Hollywood movement. I don't know if anybody's heard about that, but it's basically assistants at agencies and production companies advocating for higher wages because like their wages have stagnated over the last 20 years while cost of living has skyrocketed in LA. So just the hashtag Pay Up Hollywood has basically kind of like motivated a lot of agencies and production companies to raise the wages is to kind of meet a more like humane standard of living for assistants in the industry. And assistants don't have union representation. Like they're not unionized at all. So they'd really, like that was the only way that they could really advocate for themselves was like, kind of organizing in such a way and, putting it out there on social media in such a way that it got their wages up and actually got them to a place where they could, have a certain standard of living. This mask keeps falling down my face in awkward ways. But also flies into my mouth when I inhale. These are fun. I'm so glad we have these now. Never leave COVID. But yeah, and then the whole IATSE like strike that almost happened too. I don't know if you all have heard about that, but the International Association not association, something of theater and stage employees. That's basically the union that represents like most of the trade workers in the industry. Like they nearly striked because they need conditions to be better on set. And I think that. That was like in the last 2 weeks, yeah, and they ended up not, but they haven't ratified the deal. The AMPTP, the Association of Motion Picture and Theatrical Producers, I think it is. Like they haven't ratified the agreement yet. The union still has to vote on it. They could still strike, but this is the thing. Like they haven't been getting like healthy working hours, wages. Turnaround, basically the time in between shoot days, like that hasn't been respected by a lot of studios. And so like the unions are finally advocating for their time and their energy and their health. And the changes that might happen are slightly better, but at the same time, like there's so much more that could be done. And I think that now that there's like a little bit of headway that's finally that's finally been made, I think this is going to keep going. I hope it does, because that's going to make things a little bit more livable for working crews, especially in Los Angeles. But yeah, like at the same time, like I think the advocacy needs to be constant. And so like if you want the working conditions to be better, everybody has to be out there constantly advocating for it. And so it's become almost part of like the union life is just advocating for better conditions for yourself, and which is why we have unions in the first place. But this advocacy can't stop. So if you want to see conditions change for yourself and your peers, like that's what you have to do. And so you have to like get involved in actual sort of union politics, but also, just like what can you do to actually get people to understand that conditions need to be better for you and your peers on sets. So yeah, that's something I think is necessary. Yeah, Jamal.
That's what I was talking about, like the strike. Because I remember the last one was the writer's strike. The last one I can remember.
Yep.
But I was talking about sliding in. If they strike, it's almost like when the NFL strikes and they got to bring in other players from other places to keep the game going. That's what I meant by
I don't think that would affect anything. If I'm being honest, chances are production would probably just move outside the U.S. If picture strikes or if the union went on strike. I think that most studios would just take productions outside the U.S. and hire foreign crews because that's way cheaper. So they're going to do that. So I don't think the strike would help anybody trying to break into the industry. Like I think it would actually make things even harder to get in. Because again, studios will look for any opportunity to save money, and shooting overseas is a great way to save money. So there's a reason why most foreign countries like offer tax breaks for Hollywood films to shoot there. And yeah, so I think, and I'm not the only one who's had that thought. Like I've read a lot of things too where they'd be like, yeah, studios would just film overseas. So production would slow down for like 2 weeks while they reorganized their shoots and then hired new crews. And then they would just shoot everything outside the US until the strike was over. And then another thing to think about doing if conditions like living in Southern California or even New York City and working in the entertainment industry aren't ideal, these aren't the only two places where they make things anymore. In fact, most production just doesn't even really happen in LA. Like most studio production happens outside of Los Angeles now. A lot of it happens in Atlanta, but New Orleans is becoming a production hub. Texas, like a lot of different places in Texas are getting pretty big. New Mexico too, like Albuquerque, I think is also a pretty big production town now. Thanks, Breaking Bad. So there are a lot of other towns where production is happening, and they have local crews. So if Los Angeles is becoming like financially untenable, then there are other places where rent isn't, Los Angeles price or New York City price, where you can move somewhere else. You can move to like, a smaller town in Texas and, commute like 20, 30 minutes and, like get to production in Houston or something like that, or Austin or wherever you are. And then you can actually get pretty steady work, like working in, outside of California too. So I think that's something a lot of people, especially like, in Southern California, like where we live and where most of us are from, like we kind of take for granted. It's just like, well, yeah, we have to work here. Like it's Hollywood, but no, you don't. In fact, there's a lot of production elsewhere and a lot of crews that are just local to those areas. So finding a place where you're, where it's not stupidly expensive to live, but also where there is like steady production work that you might be interested in doing. It's worth researching that and maybe finding, a different place where outside of LA where you'll be happier. And I know a lot of people who moved outside of Los Angeles and are way happier because of it. So, and like I got friends in Texas, I got a friend in Montana, I know people work for PBS in the Bay Area, which is expensive, but it works. They make it work. So yeah, like there's plenty of different places that you could be that aren't LA. And trying to make it in LA, like if you're, young, awesome. Like you have more energy than I do now. When I was like 20, I could probably do it. But now, like if I was just like, yeah, I'm gonna move to LA and grind it out as an assistant, I'd be like, I'd die in a week. Like I can't do that anymore. So yeah, if like the LA, like, like grinding your way up from the bottom is like, if that's something you have the energy to do, cool, but I don't. I didn't when I got out of film school. I was 31 when I graduated from Chapman. Like I wasn't going to go be an assistant. I'm like, I'm an old man. So, that wasn't the trajectory that worked for me. So, yeah, get out of LA. Like there's plenty of other production hubs there. And also just living somewhere where the industry isn't the entire city is also kind of nice. It's fascinating, like going to other like major metropolitan areas and not have anyone talking about it. Just like, what show you work on, or like You in the Business with a capital B.
Those places you mentioned are places that have flights.
Yep.
Going to them. So I'm from New York, lived in Atlanta. Atlanta's more fun than California because the industry is definitely there. But it's kind of still a wide open place where you can actually get in and fit in, and you can make your own way. And the cost of living is a lot cheaper. And like LA, New York are places that people come to and people leave fast. So he mentioned Texas, New Mexico, Atlanta. New Orleans. These are places that people from these big cities leave, and who leaves? The artists. Yeah. Because they're broke and they need somewhere they can afford to live.
Literally everybody I talked about that I know that moved to those cities lived in LA first or in New York City first. And it's like, I can't do this anymore, and then moved out somewhere else, and I'm much happier for living there.
I got tired. I wanted to do rap when I was younger, so I used to travel over here because my cousin worked with Bone Thugs, so I used to come here, and I was living in Atlanta, and it was thriving just as much in Atlanta as it was in New York. It just wasn't as much. Like New York is the mecca of hip hop and certain things, so it was just like a little more tense there. Atlanta was beautiful to go explore your dreams. It was cheaper to live, and it was just, it was just a change. You could always go to where the work is.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Daniela.
So where in Texas, like Houston, Austin?
Oh, like Austin is getting pretty expensive, but there are like suburbs around it which are still reasonably affordable. But I mean, any of the major cities, Houston I think is the big one outside of Austin. Austin because it is kind of like a hip, sort of indie film town, thanks to like Wes Anderson and Richard Linklater and all the guys who like came out of there, Robert Rodriguez. But also like Houston has its own productions happening. San Antonio I'm sure has stuff as well. But there are like you can find a film community kind of in any major area, or you can make a film community in any major area. You have the same megalomania I do, I think, in terms of that, and I like it, and we'll talk more. But yeah, I think you can find your people, I think, in any major metropolitan area. And find sort of working like production work there, And again, like I think it's Albuquerque or Santa Fe in New Mexico too that's really coming up as well. And I'm sure there's other areas I'm forgetting. I said New Orleans, right? Yeah, New Orleans. So yeah, there's a lot of production work happening everywhere, and so like Atlanta's getting like borderline too big now, because
my mother's still there, so my goal was to buy a duplex in Atlanta and still be able to live here.
Oh yeah.
But my goals are kind of shifting because what I wanted to do in Atlanta was buy like a barn or like one of those big outside sheds, you know, like, that reminds you of the studio over there.
Yeah.
And
make a studio out of it.
You make a studio out of it and rent it out.
Yeah.
Because the land's cheaper and it's obtainable there. I could do that there. I can't do something like that here. If I wanted to have a place here, I'd have what I have now, and I'd be paying.
Yeah, the thing is, like Netflix does most of its production in Atlanta now, and now Tyler Perry's got his studio out there too.
The biggest studio.
Yep.
There's a Paramount studio or something like that there.
That's right. Yeah. So there is like studios know about Atlanta and really because again like land's cheaper. So they're putting a lot of work out there.
50 billion smaller studios all over the place.
Yep.
Atlanta's full of studios because it's like Black Hollywood. Atlanta.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it is. The same things you see here, the expensive cars, the beautiful homes.
Yep.
You see there, but just black people driving them and living in those. This is all white, that's all black.
So yeah, moving, that's potential. And then also this is something, if you have the luxury to do this next one, and a lot of times you don't, but if you find you have the time or the resources to make time for self-care, and this can take like a lot of different forms. Like this could be therapy, this could be exercise, this could be like just getting a hobby, like whatever you need to feel more like a complete person. This is making time for family and a personal life. And so if you can make time outside of, all the work you have to do to basically, make rent and, pay your bills, like take care of your car, all of that. Like if you have the ability to sort of like set aside, a day or two or a week here and there, just to give yourself some time to do something. Like again, this is such a luxury and such a privilege if you can do this, especially living in LA. But if you have the ability to like recognize it and take time for yourself. And when I say get a hobby, not movies. Like do anything but movies. Don't do movies. And like just anything outside of just filmmaking. Like let that be your hobby. I started playing guitar again, and then like got back into bass guitar, and then a whole bunch of other stuff. I got a mandolin. So like that's what I do in my off time. I don't do it for anybody. I just do it for me, and it's satisfying. I need it. And I got a dog. That helps. But yeah, so like do whatever you can, whatever you need to do to kind of get some sort of like humanity back. Like that's what this is. If you have the time and the ability to do so, if you have the money to like pay for therapy if you need therapy, like I'm a big advocate for therapy. Like that is necessary, especially when you work in this business. Like there's a lot that sort of therapy can help you get through if you work in this industry. So worked for me. I sort of got my head around a lot there. But anyway, moving on. Oh yeah, and then option 7, switch categories, which means is kind of my segue for going in to the next one. Any questions about sort of anything I've been talking about so far? Is this all fairly clear, coherent? Yeah, Megan.
What was option 3 again?
Find projects you care about.
Oh yeah. I was actually, before we continue, I was going to comment on that. Like, if anything, today with the directing thing I was assigned with the last night, they assigned me. I initially reading the script was like, okay, but I found ways to love it rather than this is my script and I love it already. Like just exploring the things that you've taught and being able to really see the character, like you can learn to love things and really dive into them.
Absolutely, and you can find the joy in working on something, I think, easily. But something that also really helps is, again, working with people you like, or if you read a script, you're like, I absolutely love this, I want to help this in whatever way I can. I was really fortunate in the picture that short film I just made, for funsies back in May that Rima worked on and Cynthia worked on. Like people read that script and they're like, I love this, I want to do it. And I was just like, oh, yay. And like for, just to kind of get people, like they were genuinely excited and cared about the movie. And like that, I'm not trying to toot my own horn here, but I'm just saying like that's the fact that, it was a bunch of people that got together who just wanted to make this thing. And so.
Like, that's what I miss about not being in Atlanta.
Yeah.
Because you're in a place, Atlanta's like, it's a place where there's so many creatives and everybody has a little piece and everybody, it's easier to just connect and bring people together. Like, I'm working on something, you want to be down for my project. You will get a tremendous amount of support because everybody wants to be somebody. And everybody is somebody in their own head. A little. It's a similar to LA. I would say it's a more humble version of LA, but it's still the same dynamic.
Yep.
Yeah,
it's a lot of people that want to make it, but I think in LA, like it's much more of a climber attitude. I think just because it's a much more institutionalized way of doing things in LA, whereas I think in Atlanta it's still it's still the Wild West, and there's still a lot more possibility there, I think. And like that I think is what's cool about it.
It's a lot of functions. It's a lot of just make yourself available. That's been my issue here is finding, like she said, she's a director, and I'm like, damn, I got a project I want to work on, but it's getting people to commit. I just noticed in Atlanta, you get people to commit and be like adamant about it. They'll be more interested in it than you are.
Yeah, exactly. Whether that be like location or just interest in the project. Because LA, it takes 45 minutes to get to one place versus. Like Atlanta,
no, Atlanta sucks too.
Yeah, the traffic's definitely bad, but at least you have that loyalty.
Yeah, it's loyalty there.
Rather than so many projects.
I've done a ton of plays. That's why I wanted to get into making film because I'm initially a rapper actor. So it was like, well, I can make my own content, and then I have the luxury of never losing out on an audition. So if I audition, I've always gotten a part. Not the part I wanted, but a part.
Whoa, and speaking of making your own opportunities, category number, you segued beautifully for me, Jamal. No, like the second category is kind of, I couldn't think of a good name, so I'm like, independent artist, and shrugged, and then committed to that after typing it. But really I use this category to talk about anybody who is generating content for themselves and not working for a studio or a client. So, this is like independent filmmakers getting friends together to make stuff. This is like YouTubers. This is like anybody who's really generating their own work and their own opportunities. And this has a lot of great things to it. Like this is kind of the path I've chosen for myself. And this, I feel more at home doing this than I did in option one. Because, you get to work solo or with a group of friends, or just with people who really care about the thing you're making. You can create your own opportunities, like I said, like you're kind of, the only one person stopping you from making something is you, which sounds cool. Odds are you're not dependent on filmmaking as a primary source of income when you're doing this, which is good because you're probably not making any money. You're probably doing this more for fun or as art, but chances are you're not making money doing this. In fact, you're probably spending more money to make movies than you ever make from your movies. This is the case with most independent, short filmmakers, and even getting up into feature filmmakers, it can get expensive. You're also responsible for every aspect of production. And when I say you, I mean you and the people you're working with. From development to distribution, there's no studios, there's no client to basically generate the work for you or put the work out into the world for you. It's basically you are doing all of it yourself. You're also responsible for finding and building an audience for your work. So rather than just having you're making something for the just Netflix audiences or something like that, you have to find the people to come and watch your movie or whatever it is that you've created. This is sort of a soul-crushing thing that kind of happens a lot, especially early on, like post-film school. In all likelihood, few people outside of your friends and family will see your work because there are a lot of people doing the same thing that you're doing. And it's really hard to kind of get a larger audience to notice what it is you're trying to put out. You will also experience 99% rejection for every 1% of success. And I talked about this actually in my acting class today, just in terms of like auditioning too. And so it's weirdly like a similar life to an actor where you audition for a lot of things, and if you book 1% of them, man, you're doing great. But you just kind of have to love the process of making things because success is not a given. And I gotta be honest, like even sort of thinking about this, it's not really a career path. Like I have a hard time calling myself a filmmaker because like I don't make money on it really anymore. Like I make things because I love it, but my job is teacher, which that's how I pay my bills. So do I call myself a filmmaker still? Like it feels like a hobby. And so it's a weird thing. It's a weird thing to kind of like reckon with, especially if you're not finding success or if you're not finding an audience. Like that's kind of a wall you hit at a certain point where you just kind of wonder, it's just like, well, who am I doing this for? Like, or why am I doing this? And like
Sorry, I didn't mean to touch you on.
Yeah, no, you got it.
Do you think, what I've noticed, since I do the music thing, I noticed there's a lot of platforms where people are making an income, probably like quarterly. And what I noticed with these people is that they flood with content. They just continue to go. And I noticed with this film thing, there are a lot of outlets that's not Netflix and this and that. And what you have to do, is it like a flood with content type thing and then see what the return is like after the
Honestly, not really. That's more like if you're starting a YouTube channel or something like that works, but you're not generating really narrative content, like you're generating YouTube content, at that point. But making like actual sustainable narrative work, like flooding the market doesn't really do much because again, you have to like find an audience for it. And so I don't know, it's a different beast when you're like trying to make like, sort of narrative short films, feature films, that kind of thing.
Has anybody ever been successful with that on YouTube?
Kind of, but it's not so much been through YouTube. I think he used the example actually in film too, but David Sandberg, the guy who made like Lights Out, and like he started doing a bunch of like short horror films. Like Lights Out got popular because of like it was a part of a film competition and just kind of like went viral on YouTube, and people saw like he just kind of kept making like YouTube horror shorts, but it was the success of Lights Out that got him to actually make the feature film version of it. But it wasn't really like he didn't build he didn't build the whole audience on YouTube. I think the audience found him after sort of Lights Out got popular. So yeah, it's not really. The thing is like there is so much like narrative short content out there that unless there is a way for you to like actually get a lot of people to like notice it and want to watch that more than anything else that's available to them to watch right now, they're not going to watch it. So like that's the thing. That's the challenge for every sort of creator of narrative work is like, how do you get people to want to watch what you do? How do you get strangers to want to watch what you do? And that's requires actually no, I take that back. There are people who have managed to get like some degree of success out of it, but the hustle they had to put in was ridiculous. But there's a short film and actually became a feature film called Thunder Road, and the guy who made it, Jim Cummings. I don't know if I showed any of his stuff in film too for either of you guys that were in it. He was a producer, working on independent films before, and just decided he wanted to make a short film. And basically, I should put this back up. Made the short, but he used the power of Reddit, and then basically like kept making things like over and over again, but really just did the social media equivalent of pounding the pavement. Like he went onto Reddit, like found who the best audiences, like via subreddits could be for his work. Like really targeted the work. Like he went ham on just like finding anybody who like would conceivably be interested in what he was doing and was active like all over social media, Reddit especially. And that ended up actually really building an audience for him. And then when he ended up kickstarting the Thunder Road feature, he had made, I think, 10 short films like in a year and a half or something like that. Like it was fast in terms of knocking them out. But by the time he kickstarted Thunder Road, like he managed to like make his goal and get people to want to make the feature version of the short. But he was relentless in terms of building an audience for himself via social media. But he was also smart about it. Like he found the people who would be interested in the work he wanted to put out, found them, talked to them, and like engaged with them a lot and said, hey, I've got this thing, do you want to watch it? And then use that as a way to like sort of build up goodwill, build up an audience, and kind of do that. But that is so much work, and he is an anomaly too. Like he made it work, but you know, he is an exception rather than a rule. But that's kind of the thing you want to do if you want to get like short narrative content to really register, is you just have to go and advocate for it as much as you can to total strangers. And again, get rejected almost 99% of the time. But for those people who are interested in it, hold on to them, and then, you know, just kind of, you know, keep generating work for them, and hopefully that audience will build. But, you know, there's no right way to build an audience, and no one way to build an audience. So it's just finding, you know, how you do that for your work specifically that's challenging. So I don't have a good answer for that, but that's the best I got for that question. Anyway, so like if you want to be an independent creator, if you want to make things for yourself and not be reliant on other people, again, also really difficult and really thankless in a lot of ways, and could be really dispiriting too. Like when, you know, you keep making things and nobody is seeing it. You're just a tree falling in the forest, you know, and no one's around to hear you. So how do you keep wanting to do it? And I think this is...
I lose the spirit based off of just being around, like, me living here is the suckiest place I've ever lived in my life. Outside of it looking beautiful and the beach being very accessible and it's 70 degrees most of the time. Outside of that, I've noticed lackluster hunger. Like in New York, if I say, yo, you wanna do this, or you wanna record a song, or you wanna be in this movie I'm making, if I'm in Atlanta, if I'm in certain places, people are coming here. People are more talk than action, and it can be very, very frustrating just getting people to be a part, because I can shoot films by myself, but that's hard. It's hard to set up the camera and shoot yourself, and then you gotta edit it and narrate it and do all of these weird things. You just can't get people to be on point.
Well, you got to think about where you are too. Like if you're in New York or Atlanta or Los Angeles, you're in a place that, like we talked about, people move to there to create things. Like nobody moves to Orange County to make content.
School here, you have all of these kids, and you're in school for this. You're not doing anything, and it's the level of hunger. There's like lackluster, like you're fed already. Your house is beautiful. Your parents are rich. You don't have the same burst of hunger or passion for any of these things.
But I also will say, like, a lot of students here are taking these classes to find out if this is something they want to do. And so, like, it's not even a lot, like, this isn't a given that if you're in this program, you want to do it. You're still figuring that out. I mean, I took classes here very specifically, A, to see if I wanted to do it, and B, if anyone would tell me to stop. And no one did, which was weird. And then my film career was born. But yeah, like, this isn't the place to find, you know, sort of like, militant commitment to anything. Like you got to go to LA, Atlanta, New York. Like that's where you'll find those people who are hungry. But you know, the people here who are hungry are going to move to LA. Like that's what it is. They don't stay in Orange County.
I always tell them, like, check out, like, the people who work in LA live over here, but that's with a certain amount of disposable income. Like I can afford, like when we were shut down, I could afford to go buy lights and buy this and buy that and buy this and buy that and have everything, and that was a luxury. But at 20, I was broke and I didn't want to work. So,
dude, I'm 37 and still broke. So you know, adjunct professing is not the most high-class career choice. But I'm content. I got a dog. I'm good. So anyway, so let's talk about some things that, you know, sort of make that I think are valuable in kind of going this route. And again, this is the path I chose for myself, and I advocate for, although it's not for everybody. But this is the direction I like and feel most at home in. Step one, get a day job. Dear God, get a day job. And a lot of people are just like hedging their bets, like I want to make my independent feature and I'm going to get rich. And no, you're not. and get a day job. And and a lot of people, like, you know, their definition of getting day job is being like a wedding videographer or doing corporate movies. Like, that's cool. Like that, you know, you can learn skills doing that. Like, it works. Like, that's fine. I would even say, like, get a day job that's not movies. If you want to like make art, like if you want film to be art for you, don't be a wedding videographer. Like, don't do real estate videos. You will lose the romance of filmmaking pretty quickly. Yeah.
This is very important. Get a job, because this is something I've been telling people lately. Dreams cost money.
Yep.
It costs money to fund your dreams. If you're not working like to get some dinero, your dreams are not going to come true.
Absolutely.
Somebody's going to, and people will debate me about this, and they'll be like, well, what if somebody finds him and this, and I say, then that person's footing the bill for him.
Yeah.
Somebody.
Yeah.
Like, it's not free.
There's no such thing as a free lunch. Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. And the reason for this is not only, like, you know, do you need to pay your bills, but also making movies costs money. And like a lot of people are like, oh, I'll just kickstart my movie. Yeah, good luck having people pay for your movie along with everybody else's movie that's going to be kickstarted. Get a day job, finance your own movies. Like, don't wait for other people to give you money or give you permission. Like, this is your way just to kind of like have control over your own ability to like actually do anything. And yeah, you'll probably get a job that sucks. I lucked out. I love my job. So I'm happy. But yeah, get a day job and like just kind of be in control of your own finances. Make sure you're financially secure, and then like use whatever you got left, scrounge money, and then use that to like pay for your pictures. And like that, I think is like that's how I do it, and I like it. I like, you know, just kind of paying for my own projects. I you know, keep them cheap. But on top of that, like I don't have to go around begging other people for money, and I don't have to like, you know, hold up my own productions while waiting for other people to like give me the money to make them. So get a day job, and I think the routine will also kind of keep you a human, which I think is also useful.
You know, when I used to want to rap when I was a teenager, 20-year-old, right? I hated jobs. I did not want to work at all. And the reason was I wanted to work on my rap career. But the main reason I didn't want to work is because wages were a lot lower when I was in my teens and 20s.
Yeah.
So I would say to my mom, I would say, listen, I go to work, I'm broke. I don't work, I'm broke. Mm-hmm. Why am I going to go to work?
There's different shades of broke, yeah. Dude, I know. I was movie theater box office when I was like 19, like 18 to 21. Like that was basically my job. And yeah, I was making minimum wage and, you know, just like barely squeaking by. So I get it. But you know, that's still like I got my bills paid. I just wanted to do comedy. Like that's all I wanted to do at the time. And that changed. But still, like, you know, just having the job just kind of made it more manageable. This looks familiar. Find the good people. Again, like this is less about, you know, finding people to like make your life bearable on professional sets. This is just about finding people that you like making things with, and you know, who you want to create like a support network with, and you know, like, or just a small like production entity with. You know, find those people whose work you like or who like your work, ideally both. And just keep working with them and keep making content with them. The people I make movies with are people I've made movies with for like the last 10 years for the most part. And I just like working with them. And I'll help out my friends however, you know, they need me to help out. My friend Ann reached out to me, was like, hey, can you boom up my shoot? I'm like, I don't know how to do that, sure. Like I haven't done that since my first year of film school, but yeah. And like I was happy to help out. Because I love her and want to help her out. So, and I know she'd do the same for me, and did. She worked on my set in May. Find those people that you like working with, work on their pictures, like find them, like, and they'll come and work on yours. And just having that support network there, like of those people, like who you can just like get together and be like, we're gonna make things, and then just constantly like grind that out. Like Cynthia, I know you have those people, like you make things, and it's great. Like I think that's incredible. So when you find those people, hold on to them. I have friends that I went like as a Saddleback student like 10, 11 years ago, who I made things with, and I still make things with them from time to time, and I love it. I love it so much. So it's hard to find the people who like really vibe with you, but when you do, like just keep them close. And again, it might take a lot of searching, but when you find them, and you know. This can easily be misconstrued, but I think it's really important. And so invest in gear and learn how to use it well. When I say invest in gear, I don't mean go out and buy an RE Alexa, like take out a loan and buy tens of thousands of dollars worth of gear. That is not what I am talking about. But I was talking to a former student of mine, and we used to have to, in Film 3, basically, everybody had to use their own gear because for whatever reason, the college was just like, you can't take gear off campus. So Film 3 just was still like, you had to use your own gear and it's very independent filmmaking centered. And then in the pandemic, that just became everybody. But for Film 3, originally, like for a couple of years, like that's how it was. And I was talking to her about her experience with it. And she said that like one guy had all the gear basically. And he knew how to use it and he was like letting it out and putting it out into the world. But the problem was, like it was basically him that was like holding the gear hostage and holding the opportunities to use that gear hostage. And because they never got really their chances to sort of get their hands on like that camera and those lights and everything, it really limited their ability to make things that they wanted to make. So I think even if you're just investing in like Filmic Pro on your iPhone, and then like a couple lights or something like that. Or if you want to like scrounge together a few $1,000s, get a good like mirrorless camera, and then like just like a small lighting package. Like get whatever you can, whatever you can afford to put together. Hopefully, thanks to your day job, and just kind of like even as like a collective. If you have like a group of people you like making things with, like as a group, invest like sort of in gear you can use to make all the things you want to make for yourselves. But do that and learn how to use it really well, because that'll do two things for you. One, doesn't mean you have to lean on anybody else to like get gear for whatever you're trying to make. But also you'll learn skills, like you'll get actually better at it, and then you'll be more useful on other people's sets, which will then make more people want to come and work with you too. So yeah, again, I'm not saying like take out a loan and sort of spend way too much money. I know people who have done that and it has not worked out. But at the same time, like buy a camera that you can use and keep using. Like buy lenses you can use and keep using. Buy lights you can use and keep using. Just for you and all of your friends' projects, and really learn how to use them well. And then you won't have the barrier that's like, oh, I can't make this, I don't have the gear. Like, yeah, you can make it now, because you control all of the resources to make the thing. And just putting it out there, like DaVinci Resolve is free, and that is editing software, sound design software, VFX software, and coloring software. And it's actually getting better and better over time. Like when it first started to be like an editing software, I'm like, this isn't great. Now I almost prefer it over Adobe Premiere, which I've been using for the last 10 years.
Blender, another one.
Blender's also free, that's right.
And
yeah.
it's also not just 3D modeling, it also has its own editing inside of it.
Does it really?
Yes.
I didn't know that. Okay. Blender's coming for Resolve now. All right, I like it. That's cool. Okay. So yeah, I would say like there are like in terms of software, like you don't even have to spend money for that necessarily. Like just one of you, so like in your group, has to have a good enough computer to like cut footage and Resolve in your set. But yeah, so like you don't need to spend a ton of money necessarily, but just figure out like what gear like you can actually get your hands on like as a group, and just like make the most of it. Learn how to use it well. Like get better with it like over and over and over again. Don't let other people limit your access to technology. So yeah, I think that's it's an important lesson, because I felt terrible when she told me. She was like, yeah, I felt like I couldn't make anything because he wouldn't let me get access to the gear that he was letting other people use. I'm like, that sucks, and I had no idea. Like I felt awful about it. So yeah, I'm all about being in control of your own destiny as much as possible. And so don't let anybody tell you can't make something just because they've got the gear to do it and you don't. So get the day job, buy the gear, and use that gear.
Thrift stores.
Seriously, yeah.
Very expensive areas. Where it costs the cost of living is high, go to their Goodwill, go to their local thrift stores. I got 900 lenses.
Oh yeah.
I got 900 lenses. I got 50 million Canon cameras.
Yep.
And I bought an adapter for my Z-Cam.
Mm-hmm.
And I use all of these different lenses now. I got my lights there. I got 2 3-point lighting setups.
Yep.
I got a lot of gear. Props. Thrift store. I shouldn't be telling everybody.
No, you're not wrong though. And also, I will say this: buying old Canon lenses from eBay, specifically Canon FD lenses, they are such good lenses that you can buy an amazing lens for like $28, like a 50 millimeter like camera lens.
I bought a whole camera and a lens that's in my car. I forgot to take it out.
Yeah.
For $20.
That's amazing.
$20.
Where?
I'm not telling you my thrift store.
You got to put the work in.
Good to know, good to know.
Yeah, that's amazing. But yeah, no, like I have a set of like 7 Canon FD lenses. One of them was $300, but the rest of them were like $20 to $50 each.
Yeah.
And it was only the wide lens that was like $300. I'm like, I need a wide lens, but the rest of them super cheap.
The reason I buy a lot of times the camera with the lens is because they won't have the cap for the back of the lens, just the front. So I buy the whole camera so I have a way to
so I close off the lens.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of my FDs only came with like the front lens cap, so that's the lens I usually keep on the camera too. So you're not the only one. All right, but moving on. Another thing, like if you've taken any class with me, this is something I talk about all the time. But devise projects with your means in mind. It's sort of the available material school of filmmaking. But so many times, like film students will have these high-minded ideas for like pictures they want to make, but they won't realize. They don't realize that they don't have the resources to make that thing in their head good, and so they come in with like big budget feature ideas, and they're like, I got $500, and that doesn't go a long way in making movies. So learning to make movies based on the resources you have, like not only the filmmaking technology you got, but who do you have to be in your movies? Like where do you have as locations to film? And like just understanding like the limitations that you've got as a no budget like independent filmmaker, and making movies within those constraints like will allow you not to like spend a ton of money to make those movies, but also allow you to keep making those movies because the problem I have with film programs, like, I went through Chapman, but the same thing happens at USC, AFI, like NYU, any of the big programs, is that students for their thesis films, like they're spending $30, $50, $100,000 to make a short film. Like one short film. They're borrowing money, they're kickstarting, they're like basically cashing in every favor they got to make this one movie. And in almost every case, those movies are just like, that's pretty good, and then that's it. But now when they want to make the next movie, like they have no more resources to go and like hustle more money from people. And so that becomes a problem. So I think I really don't like that that's the way that people learned how to make movies in a lot of film schools, is because like it trains you to like only make movies on a very large scale. And it doesn't train you to like make movies in a way where you're not just like spending a ton of money or borrowing a ton of money or you're basically like one good shot at Kickstarter. To get your movie made. And so like making a movie within your means, like, you can make it. If it sucks, who cares? Make the next one. And so like don't spend a ton of money to make movies. Like instead, get your friends together, make a thing, finish the thing, and then, make the next thing. Like don't spend thousands to make a short if you don't have thousands to make a short. Like spend, enough money to like feed the people working with you. Like shoot for a day, cut it together, put it out in the world, you're good. Like I work within your means as much as you can, and figure out like what are the best stories you could tell with what you've got. Not like how can I make this story I want to tell with what I have. So start with what you've got first and build stories around that. And this is basically like if you take Film 1 with me next semester, this is like the heart of everything we're going to be talking about. Yeah.
Also, make great relationships.
Oh, totally.
I got a spot I can film now. Whalen on Laguna Beach. Mm-hmm. The whale guy.
Oh yeah.
Who has the art gallery.
Mm-hmm.
I can shoot in his gallery because I went to one of his art shows. I talked to him, and I was like, man, I shoot film. I go to Saddleback, and he's like, oh great. I said I would love to do something in here. Remember during COVID when I shot in film 2 with you, I had a bunch of locations to shoot at.
Yep.
Because what I did was I made in my means, but your means is as far as you can expand them. So I always, when I meet people with cool houses or cool stores, I'm like, oh my God, I love you. I want to shoot in your store. And typically they'll say yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, filmmaking again is, even if you're making it on a micro budget level just for friends, like it's still about networking and meeting people. So, you know, so that is still a big part of the job. I think you're absolutely right. And next, and this is a big one, and I think this is something I've been thinking about more and more lately. Figure out who your audience is and show your work. Now, for a long time, especially when I was in film school, like the thing, like in every screenwriting class you take or in a lot of the production classes you take, they ask you the question like, who is the audience for this? You got to know who your audience is and you got to write for your audience. And I never had a good answer for that question. Like I could never be like, oh, you know, 18 to 25-year-old males who like golf. Like, I don't know. I could never figure it out. I'm just like, I don't know, people who like it. Like that's like, I could never really figure out the audience question because it was always phrased in the form of demographics. And I never liked that. It felt so mercenary, it felt so businessy, and I don't have a brain for business, which explains a lot. But at the same time, like I could never wrap my head around, it's just like, I can't make a movie for like a target group of people. Like I don't know how to do that. And I don't know if that's the right way of doing it. But I started thinking about it recently. I think about a lot of things all the time. But I've been thinking about it recently, and I was reading, I forget the book. Oh, Slapstick by Kurt Vonnegut. And he has an intro at the beginning of that book where he talks about how his sister was always the person that he wrote for. And he, like, you know, as big a novelist as he was with Slaughterhouse-Five and Cat's Cradle and all the novels that just kind of blew up for him, the only person he ever really wrote for and wanted to entertain with his books was his sister, and that was it. And then, like, that book was written like right after she passed away, and so he was like reflecting on sort of how his entire like creative career was basically just trying to make her happy, and really kind of a beautiful thing. And even though the book is ridiculous, but just this idea that you're making a movie not for a demographic, but you're making a movie for a person, like a real concrete human being. I think this is something as filmmakers we lose sight of a lot, or just as creative people we lose sight of, because especially like in an industry like the film industry, the entertainment industry, where you're trying to get the widest possible audience, you're trying to get the most people to watch your thing, you lose sight of the fact that real people are going to be watching and like reacting to your work, or can at the very least do that. But we're so often disconnected from the moments when those people like really get to watch what you're actually watching. And it was this year's Newport Beach Film Festival screening where I just realized, like, A, it was my first time in a movie theater in a year and a half, which was already weird. But also like watching people react in real time to work that had never really seen the light of day outside of a class before. And getting people, like getting that feedback, that immediate feedback, like Cynthia, like you screened a picture there, like just, how did it feel having people respond, like strangers responding to your work live in the room with you?
Very difficult to see my acting debut for the first time.
Oh, yeah.
I was not ready for that. Not gonna lie, I feel as if I talked to Professor Konishi about it. Think about it when your movie's on the screen, and it really just highlights all the imperfections in a way. It kind of broke my spirit a little bit, humbled me a bit, made me rethink about my life choices. But other than that, it was one of my COVID projects too. So I was like, there are so many things that, well, one of which, it made me appreciate a crew, appreciate a budget. But other than that, it really made me realize, at least like, one thing that came to my film was that I like to go on a comedy route when I can't afford a budget, because I think it's a really easy way to meet the audience. But being able to actually see people react, because when I saw in the classroom, we were in the Zoom format. Yeah. So really all I was seeing was just myself, but when I'm actually in person, seeing everybody react to it and seeing what jokes hits, what jokes doesn't hit, makes me really, understand, okay, this is what people find funny, this is what people want. Especially when you see it with other films too, and seeing what works. It really helps you ground yourself back into the audience, because sometimes as filmmakers we're so in depth, just like, I want to get my vision out there, that we can't figure out what we're making it for, which is other than ourselves, for the
Absolutely, and I mean, I feel your self-consciousness. Like I do the same thing every time. Anytime I put my work up in front of people, it's always agony initially, and then, but you kind of get to the same place. Like, coming from live theater and comedy, like like I did for years before finally getting into film, you get immediate feedback. You have like an audience actually there, telling you if they like the thing you're doing. They're laughing if a joke is actually funny. Like they're, applauding if something was actually good, or booing if it was garbage and you're in France. Cannes Film Festival loves to boo. But yeah, like having that feedback, like having sort of the experience of seeing other people watch your work is so important. And as filmmakers, we're so disconnected from it because like we're often not there when people are watching it. And because almost everything is online now, like we're even less there when people are watching it. Like we put stuff on the internet and we don't get to see them react. We don't get to see people watch it.
You gotta pump it once you put it on the internet. You have to make ads for it.
Oh yeah.
Like you really have to treat it like a product when you put it on there. You have to kind of
But-
keep it, you force feed it.
But the point I'm trying to make is that I think it's important to reconnect yourself with the audience, like not in a sort of digital advertising kind of way, like get people together, like get real human beings together in a space, even if they're just friends or family, and make something that's going to make them laugh or make them feel an emotion, make them cry, make them scared. Like whatever it is you're trying to do, like make a movie for an audience that is real people that you know and can show things to concretely. Because I think, again, it's so easy to get dispirited when you're putting work out onto the internet and you're just watching the watch counter go up. Like that means nothing. That means nothing to you. The only thing that feels good about it is when like if the number gets big, that makes you feel good. But that's not a way to like measure your worth as a filmmaker. Like I don't like it. Like it's not a sustainable way to go, and I think it's kind of a toxic way of like treating your work too. Whereas like if you're making something for someone you know, like whether it's a friend or family member, and you get to actually like get into a room and watch them watch it, or you can like just get friends together and just like screen all your pictures together. Like that is kind of an amazing thing. So I think that's really valuable, and I think it's important to like, even if, again, if you're just getting friends together and watching it in your living room, or getting a projector and like putting it up onto a sheet in the backyard, like I've known people who've done that, like that's great. Like I think that's so important. Just find people who like were not involved in the making of the movie and make it for them, and like really just figure out who your audience is, as in who is that one person, or who are those like few people that you're like, I want them to be entertained by this. Because here's the thing, if like one person likes your work, other people are going to like your work. Like that's just naturally true, but you want to make sure that that one person really likes it. So if you're making something for that one person, then I think that's really useful, because now like you're not sort of trying to get into the psychology of it's just sort of like a 25 to 49-year-old horse enthusiast. Like now you're just now you have a real person who has real taste and likes real things, and you're making it for them, and you're connecting with them by making this thing for them. And then, if they like it, great, you won, you did it. And you've made a piece of art that had an impact and made people actually appreciate the thing. And you got to have that feedback too, because you're there showing it to them. And so find out who that person is and who you want that person to be. Who is just, who you want to be your biggest fan, that is actually a real person in your life, and just make something for them. And show them that thing and be there when you show it. And get other people to be there too, and just see how that goes. But getting that experience of like having other people be there in the room with you watching your work and seeing how other people respond to it, it changes the way you relate to your work. It's not a thing that you're just making and throwing out into the world and being like, am I famous yet? Like now it's actually like you're seeing the impact of it immediately. You're seeing how these people that you care about like actually are reacting to your work. And that, to me, I realize like that is more valuable to me than just like watch counters going up like on YouTube or Vimeo or something like that. If you want to be an artist, you want to make work that connects with people, but you also want to see how that work connects with people. You want to actually be there and like experience it with them and sort of get that sort of like, I'm an approval junkie, and I know I shouldn't be, but like having other people tell you you're good like in person, and like getting that experience of them genuinely liking a thing you made is great. And so like if you can make that opportunity for yourself, I highly recommend it. Yeah, Megan.
This relates into like, I was thinking the same thing the other day when you see a YouTube video and you're like 245,000. Oh, gross! Like instead of 2.5 million.
Yeah.
And then like I often think of the real life example as well, where 60,000, which seems like such a small number on a website, fills the Rose Bowl in Hollywood, which is a humongous stadium, one of the biggest out there.
Absolutely.
And so that's a great thing to think about.
Well, this is something I've been thinking about a lot more, and this actually speaks to Daniela, what you were saying about, it's just like, how do you make a new Hollywood? You don't. And what you do instead is you make movies for just your community. You build a community and make movies for them. And so this is something I've been trying to think about, like how to implement in a greater way. And I have ideas, crazy ideas. And naturally I pitched them to Tomlinson, who was my guy. I pitched crazy ideas to, and he's like, oh, it's so good. So I might, in the next couple of years, implement something. But how do you, rather than trying to like get the biggest possible audience, like how do you make a community and have people within that community just making films for that community? And when I say community, I don't mean sort of a large internet community. I mean like a literal local community, like regional. Like we have community theater, we have like community music performances, but we don't have community films. And so like what do you do? Like what happens when you're just making movies for a very local group? And yeah, if they expand out beyond that, like that's great, but if you're making movies for this small audience, like that you can actually see and interact with and get to know, how does that change the work you make? And I'm genuinely interested in like what the answer to that question is. So that's something I'm going to be exploring over the next couple of years in my challenge, bring down Hollywood, kind of burn it all down attitude. But yeah, and that's again about knowing your audience and making movies for them too, and actually being there with them, like as they screen your work, like making it a community activity, because then like you have like the hard part about being an independent filmmaker. This is such a long talk. The hard part about being, thank you for all bearing with all of this, by the way. Yeah, the hard part about being somebody who just like makes movies, for the joy of it, for the art of it, is that you make it and just put it out into the world, and you never get sort of the satisfaction of it having an impact anywhere, which is always a really hard thing to do. Like yeah, you get the joy and sort of like if you get the satisfaction of finishing something, great, that's good. But there is like sort of a finish line when you finally screen it for real people, and like getting sort of that feedback back from people, I think is such a missing step for so many filmmakers, which is why people stop doing it. And so like using art as a means to connect with real human beings, and using movies as a way to connect with real human beings, I think is a way to get a different kind of joy out of it than you normally get. And so I think that's something that more people should think about, and more people should really try and do. And do I have another one? I can't remember. Nope. I think we've hit the end. Yeah, obviously, like I just want to put this out there. I don't have all the answers. I don't know a whole lot of anything. You can disagree with every single word I've said. That is absolutely fine. And you can be like, no, the industry's great. Burn up Hollywood. I don't know. Whatever the opposite of burning down Hollywood is. And that's fine. Like I've talked with friends and I've talked with other people who are in the industry. Again, a lot of minority filmmakers, film workers, women, non-white people, queer people, trans people, like all working in the industry. And again, it's harder when you're not a straight white man.
Sort of.
Wait, what?
Kind of, sort of.
Yeah,
The dynamics changed it a little bit.
a little bit, but even then, like you'd be shocked at how regressive it gets, and specifically in industry circles too. It's
Waiting on those guys to die like the politicians.
right. I'm running out of time. Their health care is too good. Give it to us. But we have hope still. Anyway, so yeah, like again, I talk to a lot of people, and so I hope, a lot of these things are like their ideas and their experiences, and not just mine. But I hope these are things you can hold on to, that you can turn to when you are out working in this industry, and when it gets hard. Like there are ways to sort of think about it and do things that make it enjoyable, that can make it something that you love again. And so yeah, I hope this was useful. I hope it was valuable. It was actually kind of, I loved just writing it, because I'm just like, oh, this gives me hope. And I'm a depressive, hopeless person normally, so it was good for me. But yeah, I'm done now. Thank you.